Hi, welcome. It's me again, Kristen Leonard or Professor Leonard. I am here to talk about rhetoric and specifically the rhetorical situation as it applies to writing and the persuasive essay or personal position paper. Some of you may know it as the research argument or an argument. Um, I'm also going to be talking about rhetorical appeals as Aristotle defined them. You might know, you might have heard of these. They're ethos, pathos, and logos. All right, let's get going. I'm actually going to be going onto the Owl Purdue website. Again, it's a wonderful open source writing lab that has everything. So if you ever have a question in terms of writing, whether it's writing a paper for a social studies class or maybe you're doing a research analysis, a study, owls and their nocturnal habitats. Everything is here on the Owl Purdue website. So just you can see it. Again, I have links of it everywhere. You can look here too. All right. So first of all, I guess most importantly is what am I talking about when I say elements of rhetorical situations? Well, basically, uh, every time we talk about a rhetorical situation, we're talking about communication in some sense. That could be a written piece of communication, a text. It could be a little message you leave on a sticky note, for your parent or your sibling, or it could be an email that you send to me or to another teacher, or it could be an actual research paper that you're going to be writing. I'm going to focus most of this video on that persuasive essay. So we'll kind of move that over in a minute. But this is what we're talking about is the rhetorical situation. What are the elements that are common to all of those different forms of communication? So there are 5 basic elements that all different forms of rhetorical situations share. One is the actual piece of communication. So whether it's a single text, whether it's a research essay or persuasive argument, or maybe it's me talking to you right now. That's a form of communication. So we call that the text. Next is the author. That is somebody who's using the communication. That could be you sending a text or posting on social media. It could be me right now talking to you, doing an impromptu speech, i.e. lesson. Same thing, just oral communication. Audience is the number 3, and that would be you watching the video. You are the recipient. You are hearing my communication, or you are reading the textbook or the web page. Maybe you're reading a text from your friend, or maybe you're writing a reply to your advisor or to somebody else that emailed you. Number 4, we have purpose. Okay, so the purpose of this video is for me to explain to you more detailed, finer points about rhetoric, so you feel better prepared to write that persuasive essay. Now, your purpose for posting on social media, let's say you wanted to tell people how great your day at Disneyland was, your purpose might be just to express happiness or to entertain your friends with what you've done. You may also be sending me an email saying, oh my gosh, I'm late on turning in my essay. You wouldn't say it like that, but we'll get there in a second. Setting, time, place, environment surrounding a moment of communication. Right now, so the setting would be a video. It's a recorded video. You click on it, and that's the setting and the time. I'm not coming in front of you and doing a speech about this. Now, I may, if you are if we're in a classroom together and I am your teacher, I will talk to you right here, and that is the setting. It could also be that the setting is an essay. I am reading the essay and it must be turned in on this time. And so that would also be relevant. All these things come into consideration as we move forward and find out. Okay, so let's kind of go forward to, all right. All right, so let's go to a visual representation of this. I think this explains it very, very well. We have right here the rhetorical situation. This is a wonderful visual graph. You can see right there, the text is in the center. That's me talking to you. That will be your research essay, your research paper, or that will be your persuasive argument, okay? And so when we have that, we have our research paper, we have our research argument, we have every other form of text. We have to analyze all those little different factors. Audience, in a college classroom, you're writing for academia in general. You're writing for me, you're writing for your other teachers, you're writing for your college classroom classmates, okay? So you are in the wider stage of joining us in this wonderful world of scholarly publications. So therefore, we have certain guidelines we follow. So that is your audience. You're not just sending a text to your parent or to your friend. Or, it's not that informal quality. You need to adhere to our expectations in that college community. What is the purpose? The one on top? Now, the purpose of the persuasive argument is going to be to persuade your readers to take a stance and persuade your audience to see your perspective, whether or not they share your opinion or they're in agreement with you on that stance or they're not. Okay, that also will be, we go back into that side lower left right hand corner, we have the audience. The audience is fellow college students. Now, if you're writing a persuasive essay, that audience may be all for your perspective, or they may be a naysayer. For example, if my paper was on electric vehicles, okay, EV vehicles. EV vehicles are the solution to our world challenges and global problems, and we should embrace the technology. That's kind of a sloppy but tentative thesis, but just kind of we're on that side. Yes, they are going to change the world. Now, your audience, you may have people that agree with you, and you may have other people that go, wait a minute, we got some issues here. So we have to think about that. If your purpose is to persuade your readers, you have to also keep in mind that your audience will, at any given time in a persuasive argument, be made up of people who agree and people who disagree. And it's your job to kind of move them over, everyone, to at least, if not taking your side and agreeing with you, to at least understanding your side, okay? Now we have also writer, that would be you, okay? In the case of a research paper or persuasive argument, that would be you, all right? Context, again, is the classroom. Let's go ahead and define the purpose. I'm just going to focus. There are two here. There are many different broader purposes to write, okay? To inform, to persuade, to express, to entertain. Again, you're going to be focusing on the first two in a college classroom, as well as most professional situations that you will find yourself post-graduation, or even maybe right now. So you might be finding yourself either informing others or persuading others. It's not to say you won't express or not, you won't entertain, and we'll do that many times. I'm going to send you I'm going to send a text out and show everybody this funny picture of, a cartoon, or I'm going to share a cat video that I found, okay, on Instagram. That would be express, entertain, right? So here we go to inform. I want to actually focus on the right-hand column. So to persuade, you may have a topic already that you're trying to consider how to approach this. Now think about how you can either argue for that issue or stance, advocate, okay, that this is something that needs to be, you're on that side of it, to call to action, okay, to convince, to defend, to evaluate, to justify, or to recommend. I recommend that we blah, 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 okay? So these are the persuade column is the section that we'll be looking at with a persuasive essay. The to inform, that will become relevant in more of a research-based paper. If you have an assignment that says that you need to analyze or inform your readers on your topic, that would be more the left-hand column. You're not trying to persuade people. If my topic was also EV vehicles, but the guidelines of my assignment that was given by my teacher was to inform my audience or to analyze your topic, and explain with evidence, with sources, right? So that would not be, if that was the case, then you're going to keep to the left-hand side. It's more of an objective stance. You're going to announce, to define, to demonstrate, to describe, to exemplify, to report, to teach. I am teaching you. I'm not giving you my judgment whether or not I think this is something that works or not. I am simply teaching you. So, but in that research paper, it's a little bit different. We're going to stick to that right-hand column to argue, advocate, to call to action, to convince, to defend, to evaluate, justify, to recommend. All right. So, yes, we talked about audience. Okay. So I'm going to go straight forward to, this is something that you may already be familiar with: ethos, pathos, and logos. So these are 3 persuasive strategies that Aristotle identified that make an argument effective. In other words, if you are using these 3 strategies, we call them rhetorical appeals, then you have a better chance of persuading others to your perspective, or basically convincing them, you're getting them on your side, okay? So actually, you've been using these 3 strategies probably all your life. We just haven't put a name to it. First of all, we have logos, or this is an appeal that appeal to reason that relies on logic or reason. So it basically takes 2 approaches. It either depends on inductive or deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning takes a specific case of facts, then it draws a generalization or conclusion from them. So an inductive reasoning must be based on a sufficient amount of reliable, credible evidence. This is a great example right here. Fair trade agreements have raised the quality of life for coffee producers. So fair trade agreements could be used to help other farmers as well. So we have a great deal of evidence in that first phrase here, that fair trade agreements have raised. So we have a lot of evidence. Because we have this, then this should be true as well, okay? Because this works, therefore this should work. Deductive reasoning begins with a generalization, and then it applies it to a specific case. So the generalization you start with must have been based on a sufficient amount of reliable evidence. We have an example here. Genetically modified seeds have caused poverty, hunger, and a decline in biodiversity everywhere they have been introduced. So there is no reason the same thing will not occur when genetically modified corn seeds are introduced in Mexico. So in this example, this sentence right here, the author starts out with a large claim. We have genetically modified seeds have been a problem everywhere, okay? And because they've been a problem everywhere, we're going to take that, we say, because this is true, then this also is true. And then it draws it to a very specific, localized conclusion. Because it's true on a larger scale, then it's going to apply to this narrow scale, this narrow specific area of Mexico as well. Okay, so that is on logic. So basically, if this exists, then this exists. Logic, because I'm sitting here talking to you and explaining rhetoric, it's only, and let's say I know you watch it, okay? It's only logical that you're going to have more of an awareness of rhetoric. Because this exists, therefore this exists, okay? Like I said, it's something that you've actually been using most of your life, if not all of your life. All right, so let's go. Oh, yes, we have to avoid in your persuasive essay, you have to avoid logical fallacies, okay? For example, these are wonderful. You may be familiar with some of these. So these will weaken your argument. So we as readers and audience members, we hear these, and all of a sudden we have less confidence in you as a writer slash speaker because it just doesn't make sense. So we want to avoid logical fallacies as you're writing. This is wonderful. We have a slippery slope. That's a conclusion that, if A happens, then a series of small steps will happen too. Okay. And because that happens, basically A will equate A and Z. If we don't want Z to occur, then A must not be allowed to occur. Let's go ahead and just read the example. If we ban Hummers because they are bad for the environment, eventually the government will ban all cars. So we should not ban Hummers. So in this example, the author is equating banning Hummers with banning all cars, which is not the same thing. So if I made that statement, you'd be like, what? It doesn't quite make sense. And so my argument that we should not ban Hummers would not make sense. I have just lessened my effectiveness to get my message across to you. Okay. A hasty generalization is a conclusion based on insufficient or biased evidence. In other words, you're just rushing to that conclusion before you have all the facts. Let's look at the example here. Even though it's only the first day, I can tell this is going to be a boring class. In this example, the author is basing their evaluation of the entire course on one class. So to make it a fair and honest assessment and evaluation, the author must attend several classes, maybe talk to the teacher, a textbook. So that's a generalization that is based on, the first day is bad, it's going to be bad overall, okay? So it just doesn't feel right because it's not, it's just a generalization. It's got a fun, fancy word, post hoc ergo prompter hoc. That, in other words, if A occurred after B, then B must have caused A. Yeah. So, example, I drank bottled water and now I'm sick. So the water must have made me sick. All right. So what's wrong with that? So if I drank bottled water and I'm sick, the water must have made me sick. Well, that is an example that there's no reason that without more evidence, there's no reason to conclude. We don't have enough evidence to conclude that the water made me sick or made us sick. Okay. If you wanted to change this, you would need to bring in evidence or give us it. So if you were writing this in your research paper, this would be something that would be a red flag. It just doesn't make sense. Okay. It's a logic. Yeah. Okay. Genetic fallacy. A conclusion is based on an argument. The origins of a person, idea, institute, or theory determine its character, nature, or worth. For example, the Volkswagen Beetle is an evil car because it was originally designed by Hitler's army. So, yeah. Why would the Volkswagen Beetle be an evil car? Because it was designed by Hitler's army. So that would be a statement that you would want to avoid to otherwise you're going to lessen your credibility as a writer. Okay. The conclusion, begging the claim, the conclusion that the writer should prove is validated within the claim. For example, filthy and polluting coal should be banned. Arguing that coal pollutes the earth and thus should be banned would be logical. But the very conclusion that should be proved, that coal causes enough pollution to warrant banning its use, is already assumed in the claim by referring it to as filthy and polluting. okay? So you're basically kind of just repeating that. Filthy and polluting coal should be banned because you're trying to prove that it's filthy and polluting. So you don't need to put it in there as well. Just simply saying coal should be banned, okay? Circular argument. This restates the argument rather than actually proving it. Example, George Bush is a good communicator because he speaks effectively. Okay, so in this example, the conclusion that Bush is a good communicator and the evidence used to prove it, he speaks effectively, are the same idea. It's circular. Specific evidence, such as using everyday language, breaking down more complicated, complex problems, or illustrating his point, maybe with an example of evidence, humorous story, would be needed if you want to prove the other half. So you can't just say, George Bush is a good communicator because he speaks effectively. You have to say, George Bush is a good communicator because he makes a joke at the beginning of every speech and puts people at ease, if indeed he does that, or whatever other evidence you want to include. Either or, this is a conclusion that oversimplifies the argument by reducing it to two sides. We can either stop using cars or destroy the earth. I see that a lot with not just that sentence, but either or. In this sentence where two choices are presented as the only options, it just sort of, you're ignoring another whole range of choices. And so there's a lot of other there's a lot of other options. And the author here is ignoring many other choices besides stop using cars or destroying the earth. So it doesn't, it just makes the argument, even if that was your, well, you wouldn't even have both of these as your, if you wanted to say we are going to stop using cars because, you could also explain that, but you need to give your readers, your audience, more than two options. It doesn't, something immediately, remember you're writing always for the naysayer. So the naysayer, somebody who doesn't agree with you on stop using cars, you just basically distance yourself from that other range of possibilities and you pushed your naysayers very far away. So you're not going to succeed in convincing them convincing them of your perspective. All right, so I'm going to go back here and just go back to this was all appeals to logic or logos, okay? So be very careful when you're writing that you're not making logical fallacies, all right? You want to make sure that you are writing statements that are logical and based on fact and based on evidence. Ethos, this actually is just an ethical appeal. So basically, because you are in the world of academia, okay, every time you write with a grammatically correct, stylistically correct, adhering to MLA or APA, you add ethos to yourself and to you as a writer, okay? So I love right here, the bottom one. So just simply by proofreading your argument, too many careless grammar mistakes cast doubt on your character as a writer. So if you just take time to spell check, do a grammar check, just run through, make sure you don't have any sentence fragments or, you're already adding to your credibility. Likewise, just organizing your argument, your composition in a logical way. For example, you have an introduction, you have body paragraphs, you have conclusion. Every time you introduce evidence, you are using your words and you are supporting it. Remember that quote sandwich I was talking about in the earlier essay? Also, you're also just, again, we look number 2, respecting the reader by stating the opposing position accurately. Like the example of, we either stop using cars or we destroy the earth. You're not really respecting your reader on that, even if because your reader might see the other perspective. So you need to state the opposing position accurately because people may have a position that's, different, is more nuanced than just stop driving a car or save the earth. How do we get to work? So you need to be respectful of your reader, and you need to explain what the positions are. Okay. Use only credible, reliable sources. This is the first one, to build your argument, and cite those sources properly. Exactly. Again, this all goes back to that audience, because you are in part of the academic world. So we kind of piggyback off of the research that's been done before. We are adding to that conversation. We are adding to that discourse. And that's how we advance our knowledge, okay, in whatever area we're studying, whether it is EV vehicles, whether it's great horned owls, maybe it's just comic books, or I shouldn't say just comic books, but every single area in academia. Pathos, lastly, this is great. Pathos is an emotional appeal. This appeals to your audience's needs, values, and emotional sensibilities. So basically, it can be, it's basically using emotion. I would have a lot of students would say, oh yeah, that's, you want to think of it as the little one-liners that get you to click, the little clickbait, Um, Actually, we could probably watch in the very bottom here and see what comes up. Maybe some will find a little advertisement. But for example, telling the story of a single child who has been abused may make for a more persuasive argument than simply the number of children abused each year, because it would give a human face to the numbers. And this is something right here. In a persuasive essay, we often will use emotion or appeal to pathos to really get our point across in a more in a way that pulls at our readers' heartstrings. So we're able to really they're really to see and really understand. Again, right here, for example, an argument, an emotional appeal can using an actual interview, or maybe an antidote of somebody, or an example of your issue or topic that really would help support the other side of it. Or we can give them numbers, let's say the numbers of children abused or something. And that's all very factual. That would come from a point where we're being logical, this many children, and we're also presenting ethos, because we're using the authority and the expertise of others, but the pathos will put a face to it. This is wonderful. Academic arguments in particular benefit from understanding pathos, because they help the appeal to an audience's academic disposition. So, but the other caveat would ring true too. You would only use an emotional appeal if it really does support whatever claim you're making, not to distract the real issue of debate. For example, if I was arguing EV vehicles, and maybe you're talking about and maybe you're discussing a car, and the fact an EV car, and the fact that somebody has to pay all this gas every single month, and you're going to give an example of John Doe, and John Doe can't afford to get to work tomorrow because he's already spent so much money in gas, and the gas keeps going up. Now we have an actual emotional response to John Doe. And you might even put that John Doe is like, supporting his partner and 4 children, and they can't even make ends meet. And imagine what happens when the gas goes up. John Doe can't get to work. And then we're going, oh, because I'm guessing we all probably know what it's like to have to get to work, or maybe pay a bill, or maybe just watch the gas go up. But that would be a story. You're appealing to that reader's emotion. Now, you don't want to make it be, put in an example that doesn't, an emotional example that doesn't appeal, just to distract. If people were to argue that EV vehicles, the batteries are pricey and they don't take a long time to charge, you want to address that before. You don't want to just address it with a story of an emotional story. Okay. Again, that goes always to being respectful and attentive to your naysayers, or those that share those audience members, the readers that share the opposite perspective. Okay. Anyway, so anyway, these all kind of play out in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and leave this there and I'll dig deeper later. All right. Have a great day.